Hey friends, it's Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I will be giving you my review of Oppenheimer. Now, if you're not new to my channel and you've been around for a while, you know I don't usually do movie reviews. I do book reviews and things about books and writing, but I'm going to do a movie review today. Oppenheimer is based on a book which I have not read, but I just really liked it and I want to share why that is. Oppenheimer tells the story of the career of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who came to be known as the father of the atomic bomb. This is a movie about Oppenheimer, not the bomb itself, and it follows his career from college student to coming to head the Manhattan Project, which was a top secret government project during World War II that ultimately led to the creation of the first atomic weapons. And then it explores the effects that this had on Oppenheimer and his career. So I really liked this movie. I think it deserves all of the hype, but before I get into why I think that is and why I liked it so much, I want to address the rating. Oppenheimer has an R rating, and I know I'm going to sound incredibly prudish when I say this, but I'm not a big fan of R-rated content, and when I found out that Oppenheimer had an R rating, I was disappointed and wasn't sure I was going to go see it. So if you're like me and you're wondering how explicit that this content might be, I'm going to explain that. Now, when a movie has an R rating, there are a few categories of content that can be responsible for this, and one of those is violence. For a movie that deals with the atomic bomb, you might expect Oppenheimer to be pretty violent. It isn't. There is one scene where Oppenheimer is basically envisioning the effects of the bomb, and he sees the skin peel off the face of a woman who's sitting in front of him. When I read this, I thought it was going to be pretty graphic. I thought we were going to see like the sinew beneath and everything. I've seen anatomical diagrams of the face and I thought that's what this would be like, but it's not. It's literally just the outer layer of skin peeling away, and it's so dry it's like paper. The imagery itself isn't very horrifying, it's more what it represents. And then the only other thing is that in the same sequence, Oppenheimer steps through the chest cavity of a burned, blackened corpse, and honestly, if you hadn't told me that it was a corpse, I might not have realized that because it's been burned beyond recognition. So the imagery itself is not horrifying so much as what it represents. Another category is language. There are about 8 or so F-bombs in this movie, and I know there are some people who would probably say that there is never a right use of this word, period. I would disagree and say that Oppenheimer is profanity done right. It's just brilliant dialogue. When the characters say this, you feel their frustration and their passion and why they care so much and what's at stake. So the writing is just really good, and honestly, it's a 3-hour movie. There's a lot of dialogue here, and so when you have 8 or so F-bombs, it really doesn't seem like that many. You really don't notice that much. It's not rapid fire. It's not constant like some movies are, and it just really works. So Oppenheimer would have gotten an R rating for its language alone, but the other category that's at play here is nudity. There are 3 scenes involving nudity, and 2 of those are sex scenes, and really all you see is a topless woman. That's about it. In one scene, 2 characters are having a conversation. They're seated in opposite armchairs and they're completely naked, but again, all you see is the topless woman because everything else is strategically obscured. I think this could have been done in a more subtle way, but I'm also grateful that they weren't as graphic with this as they could have been. And I know some people were upset about this and they're saying that it's gratuitous and it just thrown in there for titillation, and that's not true. In Oppenheimer's real life, he was something of a womanizer, and he did engage in affairs with Jean Tatlock, so this isn't out of place, and it certainly wasn't put in there just for titillation purposes. I think more has been made of this than it warrants. It's not nearly as graphic as I was expecting it to be going in, just based on what I've heard, and honestly, as I was watching it, I thought to myself, I've read far worse in books, which I'm not sure what that says about the kind of books that I pick up sometimes, but it's really not that bad. This is not a movie for children, but I think teenagers could go with their parents to watch it. Every teenager is different, of course, and every person is different in the terms of what content they can and cannot see, but I think that this movie is important enough that it can be overcome. It's not that big of a deal, and it's worth seeing in spite of these issues. So let's talk about why this movie is so good. First, you have the acting. The performances here are amazing. Cillian Murphy really embodies Oppenheimer and brings him to life. You really find yourself feeling sorry for Oppenheimer and rooting for him, and as the viewer, you kind of want to do something, you want to intervene, you want to stop him from having to go through all of the things that he ended up suffering, but of course as the viewer you are helpless to do anything but watch, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to Cillian Murphy's performance. I also heard someone say that Robert Downey Jr.'s performance was very impressive, and as I was watching it I didn't really get that impression. It's not a bad performance by any means, and Robert Downey Jr. is a great actor, but it was nothing to write home about until it was, and if you've seen the movie then you know exactly what I'm talking about. The storytelling here is phenomenal. phenomenal. The visuals and the directing and the way everything is brought together and paired up, it's just a great final product. I definitely think this is a movie that you should see in the theater while you can, because the visuals and the sound effects are going to be just that much more powerful in the theater on the big screen. I was not able to see the movie in IMAX like everybody says that you should, because there's no IMAX theater anywhere near me. In fact, I've never even been in an IMAX theater, but if I was going to go, I would definitely want to go for this because it was just amazing to watch. The bomb test scene in particular was very well done, and there's a palpable sense of tension in the theater. You can feel it building and rising, and you're just waiting for this moment to come. The special effects were mostly done with practical effects that I'm told. There was not a lot of CGI used. In fact, you can go online and find a GIF of the original 1945 Trinity test explosion, and it's very, very close. In fact, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought that Christopher Nolan used footage of the actual tests in the movie because it looks exactly like it, and that makes sense that you would use what you already have, whether he actually did that or not, because how can you CGI an atomic bomb test better than the actual test was? But it's just amazing to look at. The sound effects are amazing, and this plays into the soundtrack, which is also something that I want to mention and praise because it's very well done. There are several themes in here that are very memorable, and when you hear them, you're going to think not only of the movie as a whole, but of the specific scenes in which they play. I think a lot of people were surprised to learn that Hans Zimmer didn't actually do this soundtrack because it sounds like something that he would have done, but it's just really well done and well put together, and it brings everything else together, and this soundtrack makes you feel things. It is impactful, it's powerful, it's strong in the moments it needs to be, it's intense, it's moving, it's got this sense of dread in it as well. It's just really well done. Aside from the nudity possibly being handled more subtly, my only other complaint with the movie is its length. It's 3 hours long, and it needs to be that long because of the span of just events that this movie covers, but that doesn't make it any easier to physically sit through. About halfway through, I was like, I really gotta get up and pee, but I didn't want to climb over all of the people to get there, and I didn't want to risk missing the bomb test scene, so once I managed to get there, I was like, I can sit through the rest of it. And I did manage to do so, but it wasn't easy. I was never bored watching the movie, which I was both relieved and impressed by, considering that it is so long, but it was difficult to sit through it. I do want to go watch it again, and I think this time if I do, I'm going to get a seat on the end so that if I have to get up and leave, I can do so without disturbing everybody else, and I don't have to worry about missing something because I've already seen the whole movie. But I think it does need to be this long. It covers a lot of information. It's never boring, and I learned so much from this movie. Going in, all I really knew was that Oppenheimer was someone who helped create the atomic bomb. I did not know how complex of an individual he was. I did not know all of the things that happened to him and how he suffered both from some of the things that were done to him and also with the knowledge of what he had created. This is a heavy burden to bear, knowing that you helped create a weapon that killed thousands of people, and we see that portrayed very well in the film. I think this is partly due to Cillian Murphy's performance. It's the eyes, I think. He can convey so much through just a simple expression, and you see how much this is impacting Oppenheimer. I know that some people have given Oppenheimer crap for creating the atomic bomb as if he alone was responsible. He didn't build this himself. He had other people he worked with. And people are like, why did you build this? Humanity never should have such power. It's your fault that we're still living under the shadow of the atomic bomb today. And there's a scene in the movie in which Oppenheimer says, I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon, but I know the Nazis can't. And he's completely right. If we didn't make the atomic bomb, somebody else would have, and that somebody else could have been the Nazis, and they would have used it to far more devastating effect. They had no moral scruples whatsoever about putting such a dangerous weapon to the test, and I'm just grateful that that didn't happen. The fact that we still live under the shadow of the atomic bomb today is also something that's explored by the movie, and I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. And the ending scene of the movie in particular has a lasting impact on me. It was so well done. It's going to stay with me, and I would go back to rewatch the movie just for that scene alone. I keep thinking about it ever since I got back, and I hoped that making this video and kind of expressing my thoughts might help get it out there and I don't have to keep thinking about it so much, but it really does make you question some things. It makes you think, this movie explores moral and ethical dilemmas and quandaries, and I think that's really interesting and something that I like doing in my own writing, only this was real. It really did happen, and it still continues to happen, and I think that's just an interesting thing to explore. This is not a happy movie. You will not leave the theater feeling happy, so don't go in expecting that. I wouldn't say you necessarily leave unhappy or sad. I left feeling this sense of awe in that I had just witnessed a movie that was so well done, and also I felt very somber because of that ending scene and what it gives you to think about. I think that this movie is just magnificently well done, and I think it should be up for several Oscar nominations, and I hope that it wins because it is really well done. The box office over this past weekend has been doing really well, and this is part of the reason why, and I think it just goes to show that none of the movies that are doing really well right now are sequels or remakes, and I think it sends a clear message to Hollywood that audiences want new, well-made stories. Now, neither Barbie nor Oppenheimer is new. Barbie's been around for a while, and Oppenheimer is obviously historical, but we've never had them portrayed in such a way before, and I think that makes a big difference. I think this is an important movie to see. I think you can learn a lot from it. I think it's an interesting thing to think about. It raises some questions, and I'm very happy that I went and saw it, and I would encourage people not to be deterred necessarily by any content issues that they may have concerns about. I'm happy that I went in spite of that, and I'm considering going again. As I said, I don't see many movies in the theaters, and even fewer of the movies that I do see would I go back and see again. This movie reminded me of a 5-star book where you finish it and you just sit back and you can see now, having finished it, how everything was connected and how it was all brought together, and you just want to go back and reread it again with that knowledge because now you can look at it in a different way. And I think that that perfectly encapsulates how I feel about this movie. I can see things that I didn't see necessarily as I was watching it. I can see and appreciate now how everything was brought together, and I just want to go back from the beginning and watch it all again knowing that. And it's just really well done. I've never really watched a movie like this before, especially not a historical one. As somebody who loves history, I'm happy not only that I watched it and it was entertaining and it was pretty to look at in terms of just the effects and everything, but I'm happy how much I learned about this. And when I got home, I was just Googling, and from a cursory search, this movie seems to be pretty accurate. There were so many things in here that I had no idea went on, and I think it's important that people learn about this. And I just think that in general with history, because what happened before influences our present and our future. So it was just an amazing movie. I think this is pretty much all I can say about it. As far as the book that the movie was based on, I think the approach that it takes is basically both the triumph and the tragedy of J.R. Oppenheimer, and you definitely get both of those things in this movie. But as far as the movie itself goes, I would say it's pure triumph. So there you have it. I hope you found this video insightful or useful in some way. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. My name is Rachel Terry. I am the author of 2 young adult fantasy novels. If you're interested in learning more, links will be in the description box down below. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!